Hello and welcome to the program, UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about the Vargina incident. That's correct, the Vargina incident. It's a pretty famous UFO alien contact incident down there in Brazil back in 1996. Before I get into the actual events of what happened, I just want to create a little bit of a background scene in your mind about what it would have been like back then and what would have been in that particular environment. Of course, a lot of us have never been to Brazil, so I asked Grok, what exactly was the climate, the environment, just the overall feel of that place in 1996. It says Vargina in southern Minas Gerais state, that's southeastern Brazil, has a subtropical highland tropical climate. It says Köppen CWA or similar, humid subtropical with dry winters and hot, wet summers. In 1996, the environment and weather were typical for the region, with no major anomalies reported beyond stormy conditions during that UFO incident. Climate in January 1996. Temperatures of daytime highs were around 80 to 84 degrees. Nighttime lows were around 64 to 66. So it was warm and humid, feeling hotter due to moisture. The creature sightings were described with witnesses noting the being seemed affected by the heat. So, like they said, you're in this highland tropical environment. It's January. Of course, they're on the southern half of the hemisphere, so their January is our July, so it's going to be warmer down there. Rainfall, it says, January is one of the wettest months with frequent heavy showers, thunderstorms, downpours. Accounts from 1996 describe an unusually ferocious storm with charcoal black skies, intense rain, possibly hail, and dramatic weather on or around January 20th. This stormy context played into both witness stories and the official military explanation, people mistaking someone sheltering from the rain. That's what the official line was. You know, you had these girls, they found this alien kind of crunched up against the wall. Well, imagine this happening in this pouring down rain. Humidity in the atmosphere. High humidity, typical of the wet season. Afternoons could bring sudden heavy rains followed by muggy conditions. Skies were often clear to partly cloudy outside storms. The rest of 1996 followed the seasonal pattern, hot, rainy summers, October through March, transitioning to cooler, drier winters, June through August, with occasionally cooler nights, but rarely cold by Brazilian standards. It says, from an environment and landscape, Vargina sits in a traditional zone in the Minas Gerais, that's Gerais, historically dominated by coffee plantations. The region was a major coffee-producing hub in the 1990s, mixed with patches of Cerrado or Brazilian savanna and remnants of Atlantic forest, Mata Atlantica. The vegetation, rolling hills, pastures, agricultural fields, especially coffee, wooded areas, vacant lots, and some denser woodland or forest fragments. The sighting locations included vacant lots near residential areas, rural fields, and wooded spots. Witnesses described underbrush, grassy areas, and trees where creatures allegedly hit or crashed. The Cerrado influence brings savanna-like elements, grasses, shrubs, and scattered trees adapted to seasonal rains. I kind of get this image. We think of cities, urban areas in the States. We often think of a lot of concrete, highly developed, everything's mowed. What I'm seeing here is it's raining every day, pretty much this time of year. The grass is high. There's a variety of plants growing, and stuff is just growing so fast that it's probably not possible to keep up with the mowing and the vegetation mitigation like it is in a northern climate. So you have this mix of what's left of the jungle and this altered environment that the humans have created. And it's in a hilly area. It says terrain, hilly, mountainous corner of the state with some steeper areas and open pastures, not dense Amazon-style jungle, but a mosaic of farmland and secondary growth and natural vegetation. Kind of makes me think of those coffee commercials we used to see where you've got these very small, tiny farms. Maybe they're still doing the planting and harvesting by hand, and they're just like butted up against these more natural areas, and it's all in this kind of hilly terrain. Wildlife typical of the region: birds, small mammals, and species like tapirs or ocelots, noted in zoo incidents tied to the lore. The area supported agriculture alongside pockets of biodiversity. Like I said, you're just mixing this human-impacted area right up next to what was these little remnants left of what would have been natural forest from generations ago. Urban-rural mix. In 1996, Vargina was a mid-sized city, 100,000 to 135,000 people, surrounded by countryside. You would expect dirt roads and rural spots, modest houses, coffee farms, and green landscapes. Air quality was generally good, though local pollution from farming or vehicles existed. Strong odors, e.g. ammonia-like in some UFO accounts, stood out against the usual rural smells of earth, rain, and vegetation. You're living there, kind of a simple life. Maybe you're a farmer. Maybe you've got a job there at some local business. Or like these young schoolgirls, and you smell that ammonia smell. That's not like anything you normally have around there. Overall visitor experiences, it says in 1996, just imagine you were there. A warm, lush, green setting during the rainy season, vibrant but muddy after storms, with a scent of wet earth and coffee plantations. The environment felt provincial and agricultural, with easy access to countryside from the city. Heavy rains could make unpaved areas slippery, and thunderstorms added drama to the skies. It was a typical interior Brazilian highland setting, productive farmland blended with natural savanna forest remnants under humid subtropical conditions. It just sounds like an absolutely beautiful place to me. Just imagine being there and then coming across the situation with these aliens. Now, I went ahead and I asked AI a little bit about this just to give us a rundown of what happened, because this has been in the news a lot. I find this whole Vargina UFO incident just to be fascinating. It's been 30 years, but we have multiple eyewitnesses, and there's a lot of strange stuff that happened around it. The Vargina UFO Incident, Brazil's Roswell. For many UFO researchers, the 1996 Vargina incident is not merely Brazil's most famous UFO case, it is one of the strongest alleged extraterrestrial encounters ever reported anywhere in the world. Unlike many UFO sightings that rely on a single witness or a distant light in the sky, the Vargina case involves multiple civilian witnesses, military activity, reports of recovered beings, hospital involvement, and allegations of government cover-up that continue to generate controversy nearly 3 decades later. If this was just a couple girls coming across what they claimed was an alien, that'd be one thing. But you've got so many other things going on here involving the authorities, the hospital, and everything else. It says the event begins. The incident unfolded in and around the city of Vargina in January 1996. According to numerous accounts, strange aerial objects were observed over the region several days before the main encounter. This is precursor events. This is something we see a lot when you have these big events happen. There's sightings ahead of time. One of the most frequently cited witnesses was farmer and truck driver Carlos de Souza, who claimed to have seen a damaged cigar-shaped craft flying unusually low before it appeared to descend toward the countryside outside the city. Researchers later suggested the object may have been in distress or attempting an emergency landing. The story exploded on January 20th, 1996. 3 young women, Lelaine Silva, Valkyria Silva, and Katia Andrade Xavier, were walking through a vacant lot in the Jardim Andrade neighborhood when they encountered what they believed was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. Now imagine, we're talking about how green this place is. I could just see that vacant lot there with weeds and vines and all kinds of, maybe some trees growing up. It's not like maybe we think of as a typical urban area in the States where it's totally concrete, the grass is all dead. Now, this is a living, breathing ecosystem. They described was a creature with brown, oily skin, large red eyes, a disproportionately large head, 3 protrusions or ridges on the top of the head, a small, frail body, a strong odor resembling ammonia or sulfur, and behavior suggesting it was injured, frightened, or disoriented. Now, they talked about this little, almost demon-like creature, crouched against the wall there, almost curled up. Really, really strange. The girls were reportedly terrified and ran home, telling family members they had seen the devil. Importantly, the witnesses maintained their story for decades and never significantly altered the core details of their account. After news of the sighting spread, additional witnesses began reporting strange events throughout the city. Residents claimed to have seen military trucks moving through neighborhoods. Others reported unusual police activity and sightings of additional creatures. Rumors circulated that authorities were conducting search operations and collecting something from various locations around Vargina. Several ufologists investigating the case later concluded that there may have been more than one creature involved. According to these accounts, one being was discovered by civilians. Another may have been captured by military personnel. Additional entities could have been recovered near the alleged crash site. These claims remain unverified, but they became central to the case's enduring mystery. The most controversial aspect of the Vargina incident concerns allegations that the Brazilian military captured one or more non-human beings. Now, you can imagine, if we've got actual aliens on the ground, no matter what country it's in, the military is probably going to be pretty interested about that. Numerous witnesses reported seeing military convoys and personnel operating in areas connected to sightings. Some accounts claim that captured entities were transported through the city before eventually being taken to military facilities for examination. Researchers who support the extraterrestrial hypothesis argue that the number of military witnesses who have spoken anonymously over the years makes the official explanation difficult to accept. The alleged recovery operation has become the foundation for the claim that Vargina represents a genuine UFO crash retrieval event rather than a simple sighting. One of the most intriguing elements of the case involves reports that a creature was transported to a local hospital. Over the years, witnesses have claimed that unusual security measures appeared around medical facilities in the region. Some researchers allege that doctors and hospital staff were exposed to a being that had survived the crash. I like that choice of words there, exposed. These accounts remained largely anecdotal for many years, but recent documentaries and investigations have highlighted additional testimony from medical professionals who claim they observed unusual events during the incident. For UFO believers, the hospital aspect of the case is significant because it suggests a chain of custody extending beyond civilian witnesses and into institutional settings. And I recall the excuse by the government was that these two aliens treated at the hospital were actually just a couple of local dwarfs. Yeah, I would sure like to interview those dwarfs sometime to see what their take on that whole situation was. Perhaps the most emotionally compelling aspect of the Vargina story concerns military policeman Marco Eli Cherez. That's Chereze. According to many UFO researchers, Cherez was involved in the capture of one of the beings. Reports later emerged that he developed a severe infection and died weeks after the alleged encounter. Myself, that would be my biggest fear about coming in contact with one of these things. Is what if they're carrying some kind of a virus or bacteria that we have no defense against? Believers argue that Cherez had direct physical contact with the creature. He became ill shortly afterward. His death may have resulted from exposure to an unknown biological agent. Skeptics counter that the officer died from a documented bacterial infection, and no evidence links his death to extraterrestrial contact. Nevertheless, the timing of his illness and death continues to fool speculation. Well, they did have antibiotics in 1996. I mean, it's certainly if he had a infection, it would have been nice if they could have treated him with something. Strange animal deaths. The mystery deepened when unusual animal deaths occurred at the local zoo. Several animals reportedly died during the period following the incident, including species that were not elderly or obviously sick. UFO researchers have suggested these deaths may somehow have been connected to the alleged crash or recovered entities. Well, the idea is that these things had escaped that crashed craft. They're running around. They must need to eat, and they're attacking and killing these zoo animals. No conclusive evidence has established a connection, but the animal deaths became another piece of the circumstantial evidence frequently cited by investigators. The Brazilian military eventually conducted an investigation and rejected claims of extraterrestrial involvement. Well, imagine that. Their official conclusion was that the famous creature seen by the three women was likely a local resident named Luis Antonio de Paula, known as Mudahino, a man with mental disabilities who often wandered the area. Investigators argued that heavy rain, poor visibility, fear, and local rumors caused the witness to misinterpret what they saw. They also stated that military vehicles observed around the city were engaged in routine operations unrelated to UFOs. The city's got a population of around 130,000 tops, okay? These girls are locals. They say this poor fellow was homeless, I guess just wandered around there kind of chronically. Don't you think those girls would have recognized him? If there was some kind of a military operation going on, I mean, really? In a town of 130,000? That seems strange. Skeptics generally view this explanation as sufficient. However, many UFO researchers argue that it fails to account for the number of independent witnesses, reports from military personnel, the alleged hospital activity, the officer's death, the broader pattern of events occurring over several days. For believers, the official explanation addresses only one witness account while leaving numerous other claims unanswered. This is a common thing that we see happen when the government comes in and tries to do narrative control. They'll use one account that maybe isn't the best and use that account as a straw man to try to ignore all the others. It's a straw man tactic. Why UFO researchers consider Vargina important? Among UFO enthusiasts, Vargina is often compared to the Roswell incident because it appears to combine several elements rarely found in a single case: multiple civilian witnesses, alleged crash reports, creature sightings, military involvement, medical facility involvement, a death associated with the event, and decades of consistent testimony. James Fox's 2022 documentary Moment of Contact reignited worldwide interest by interviewing witnesses and presenting the case as one of the strongest alleged extraterrestrial encounters ever documented. Fox has argued that if the testimony is accurate, Vargina may represent the recovery of a crashed craft and surviving non-human entities. Legacy. 30 years later, Vargina has embraced its reputation as Brazil's UFO capital. The city features UFO-themed attractions, alien statues, spacecraft-shaped architecture, museums, and annual UFO events. The incident remains deeply embedded in local culture and continues to attract researchers and tourists from around the world. Bottom line, from a pro-UFO perspective, the strength of the Vargina case is not any single piece of evidence, but the convergence of many independent threads: a reported crash, multiple creature sightings, military mobilization, alleged recoveries, hospital involvement, and long-standing witness testimony. Critics argue that every component has a conventional explanation and no physical evidence proving extraterrestrial involvement has ever been produced. Supporters counter that the consistency of witnesses' accounts and sheer number of people involved make Vargina one of the most compelling close encounter cases in UFO history. Yeah, I would have to agree with that. There's just too many things going on here with this, to me, to really go along with the government's official explanation. This case has garnered so much attention even recently. I went ahead and I asked AI to tell me about the witnesses today because, a lot of times over 30 years, people's stories change, or maybe somebody could have come forward and said, well, it was a hoax or whatever. But as of 2026, several of the key Vargina witnesses are still alive, and notably, many have spoken publicly within the last few years, some for the first time in decades. The three women who saw the creature, the most famous witnesses remain Liliane Fatima Silva, Valkyria Apreciada Silva, and Katia Andrade Xavier. These three women have consistently maintained their account since January 20th, 1996. They appeared extensively in James Fox's documentary Moment of Contact 2022, where they revisited the exact location of the encounter and recounted their memories on camera. More recently, all three participated in events surrounding the 30th anniversary of the case in late 2025 and early 2026. At a Washington press conference in early 2026, Lillian, Vakira, and Katia again publicly described the encounter. Their testimony remained essentially unchanged from their original statements in 1996. Well, that's the thing. With a lie, it always changes. With the truth, it stays the same. That's what I find so convincing about these ladies. It says, what are they doing today? A January 2026 Brazilian news report found that Valkyria operates a food production business and is a mother of two. Lillian is now a mother and grandmother living a relatively private life, and Katia has remained close to the other witnesses and has continued participating in interviews regarding the case. All three stated that the incident brought them ridicule, stress, and years of unwanted attention rather than fame or financial gain. They reported that they still carry emotional scars from the experience. Why would they even want to lie about this? I mean, like they said, years of ridicule, stress, and unwanted attention. Luia Helena da Silva, mother of Lillian and Valkyrie, says, although she did not personally see the creature, she became an important corroborating witness because she immediately investigated after the girls returned home terrified. She has continued giving interviews and appeared in recent coverage discussing the impact the incident had on her daughters and family. In anniversary interviews, she stated she wished the event had never happened because of the fear and harassment it brought. Says the Cherries family, the late military policeman Marco Eli Cherries, is one of the most controversial figures in the case. According to UFO researchers, he allegedly helped capture one of the creatures and died weeks later from a severe infection. His family members, particularly his sister, have continued speaking publicly. They were interviewed in Moment of Contact and have participated in additional interviews through 2025 and 2026, discussing Marco's role in subsequent illness. For pro-UFO researchers, the Sherry's family's continued willingness to speak is significant because they maintain that Marco was involved in a secret operation and that aspects of his death remain unexplained. Skeptics, however, point to medical records indicating a bacterial infection as a likely cause. I don't know. I mean, I realize it's a tropical environment and all that, but a young guy just dying out of the blue from some bacterial infection seems strange. Dr. Italo Venturelli, one of the biggest developments in recent years is the emergence of Italo Venturelli. According to James Fox and the 2025 documentary Moment of Contact, New Revelations of Alien Encounters, Venturelli publicly stated for the first time he examined a living, non-human entity at a hospital in Vargina in 1996. Fox says Venturelli kept the story private for nearly 30 years before going on camera. Among UFO supporters, this is viewed as one of the most important recent witness developments because Venturelli is a physician whose testimony was not part of the original 1996 media coverage. Brazilian journalist Nadia has continued discussing his investigation of the case. He has publicly described being blocked by military personnel and hearing reports from hospital sources shortly after the incident. He appeared in recent Vargina-related presentations and documentaries. Military witnesses, it says, this remains the most mysterious category. Several military and police witnesses have reportedly spoken anonymously to researchers such as Victor Paciani. Paciani claims to have collected testimony from military personnel involved in transportation and recovery operations. Some of these witnesses appeared with identities concealed in documentaries, while others have never gone public. The UFO community generally regards these military witnesses as the strongest evidence for a cover-up, while skeptics note that anonymous testimony is difficult to independently verify. One of the reasons Vargina remains compelling to many UFO researchers is that the principal civilian witnesses have never recanted. Nearly 30 years later, Lillian says she saw a creature unlike any human. Vakira still says the encounter was real and traumatic, and Katia still says she felt compelled to help the being. The Shrez family still questions aspects of Marco's death and new witnesses, including Dr. Venturelli, have emerged rather than disappeared. So for believers, the remarkable part of Vargina is not that the witnesses continue talking, it's that after 3 decades, the core description of the creature, its appearance, and the events surrounding the incident have remained strikingly consistent. That's what I like about this whole case. Strikingly consistent. What a cool story. Hey, if you like the program, don't forget to hit like, follow, subscribe. Doesn't cost a dime. Until next time, this is UFO Warning, over and out.